All right, my friends, our final panel of today is focused on Bitcoin mining in North America. We have a great group of people. We have Jesse Colzani, who's the moderator. He's a partner at Blocksbridge Consulting. We have Curtis Harris, Senior Director of Growth at Compass Mining. We have Sonya Murphy, a Policy Associate at Digital Power Network. Gwyn Lauber, VP of Corporate Affairs at Canaan. And finally, Darcy Daubaras, CFO at Hive. Please put your hands together for Bitcoin mining in North America.
All right. Hello, everybody. Everybody knows at the end of the day that the last panel is usually the best, so you're about to experience that. Thank you for everybody staying here. I wanted to just start with a very quick question about, for each of the panelists, what makes you the most proud to work at the company you work for? We know Bitcoiners tend to have a lot of that motivation, and the why is very important. So from each of you.
We going in this order?
You are, yeah.
You're going to have to give us instructions. It's been late in the day, Jesse.
Please.
So, hey, your question was, why am I so proud to work at Compass Mining? We pioneered a business model. We invented a buy and host retail Bitcoin mining solution where an individual investor could buy one of these expensive, hot and loud Bitcoin mining machines and plug it in at one of these industrial facilities. And it really revolutionized the availability for Bitcoin mining to a retail investor. So I'm very proud that we pioneered that concept. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very proud to be working for the Digital Power Network and representing Bitcoin miners just because of the innovation coming out of this sector. Given the unique energy demands, it's been really interesting to see all of the technologies that Bitcoin miners have been pioneering far beyond a lot of other industries. And it's been great to bring those conversations to policymakers and ensure that they are a part of policy conversations.
And I'm most proud of working at Canaan because of their commitment to decentralization. The company was founded because our CEO at the time was a PhD candidate. He made a machine called a Bitcoin mining ASIC. He created a machine just for his own personal use, but then to protect the network, he decided to form a company that he could send the product around the world, keeping decentralization of the network. Since then, we've always followed that trend, and now we have some consumer products, again, to forward that theme of decentralization, keep that going, making Bitcoin mining available to everybody.
I guess I'm most proud to work for Hive Digital because of our founding thing at the beginning is always to be green energy, and the environment's important to us. So since 2017, when we started mining Ethereum, we've always focused on hydroelectricity or geothermal. So that's something I'm most proud of. We've always stuck to that. There's been a lot of things that have come across our plate to pull us away from that. And also in each of the communities that we operate in, whether it's Sweden, Canada, or down in Paraguay, we give back to the communities. Whether that's lighting up the streets in Paraguay, putting some air conditioning into the schools, or supporting the hockey team and the arena in northern Sweden. It's something that we've always been proud of. I think a lot of it comes from our founder, Frank Holmes, who started out in the hardcore mining. So you know that you can't just go into a community and take away all of their electricity and leave nothing behind. You have to be part of the community and not a foreigner coming in and just taking away all of the assets.
Yeah, so I wanted to start a conversation, and I'm sure you all have thoughts about this, but back in the days for an individual or for a company, it was relatively hard to get into mining. There was GPU, it was very technical, esoteric. Well, today it's kind of trivial. It's not very hard to become a Bitcoin miner or to gain exposure to this type of world. So maybe we can start with Gwyn, and specifically how easy has it become for an individual to just buy a machine, plug it in. Are there some recent developments? I can definitely think about the heating component that are worth highlighting. So.
Yeah. So just over a year ago, Canaan introduced some products to the market for the consumer market, something that would be easy enough so that someone like me could just plug it in, not have to know what they're doing. As long as you had Wi-Fi, you connect to your network, and with your phone, you can control mining. It's very small scale, but because of that, there needs to be sort of some secondary use for the product. It's not just for mining, but with the 3 products that we currently have, they also can heat a room. So the first product we had was it looked like a VHS cassette that you would put either on your desk to warm your hands, or I have one under my desk to warm my feet in the wintertime. But really simple, not a lot of compute power, but just enough. You join a pool and you can participate in Bitcoin mining. We have a bigger product that looks like a baseboard heater that can heat your whole room, and then we have a large and quiet one that can, you could have it running behind us and you wouldn't really hear it. So the great thing about it is you're using the byproduct of Bitcoin mining to heat a room to offset your cost of heating, which is a great advance. And there's so many other opportunities that I like to think that we'll keep expanding and innovating and coming up with new consumer products so that everybody can participate, nobody's shut out. And then again, with the decentralization theme of keeping the network safe, everybody has a piece of it.
Staying very true to the ethos of Bitcoin, very, very important, definitely. So the machines that Canaan produces are definitely very silent. They don't make that much noise. I didn't buy one of those machines many years ago. I bought a noisy one. It lasted only a few days before my wife was like, get out of here. So I guess for the people who don't really want necessarily a physical machine in their house or whatever location, what are other alternatives do they have? Curtis, maybe specifically you can talk about that side and even the enterprise side of things with having companies managing hardware on your behalf and the experience of compass mining.
Well, I think if your question is, if I'm an individual and I don't want a Bitcoin miner in my house, what are my other options? I think those options are honestly limited or unlimited. Heat reuse seems to be one of the most compelling things. It really is going to matter on what's your purpose. Are you trying to acquire Bitcoin because you want it to grow non-KYC? Then solutions like Compass Mining, or if you're you own you're an industrial manufacturer and you're already creating steam, and you realize that you're spending so much money on electricity, but you could redeploy Bitcoin miners inside your industrial facility. So I think, once you move past that residential, I'm going to plug in, a machine in my house, you have the opportunity to mine anywhere that electricity is already being used or heat's being created. And I know you want to ask the same question to the rest of the panelists, so I wanted to throw out one, I think humorous anecdote. We used to have a slogan, Compass Mining, now everyone can mine Bitcoin. And after a few years of figuring out Bitcoin mining is hard, our chief mining officer looked at our slogan and thought, just with the removal of the W and changing it to a T to not everyone can mine Bitcoin, it is hard. It's hot, it's loud, it uses a lot of electricity, it's tough to stay married, but with innovative solutions like HeatBit and Canaan's products where you can plug it in and it automatically attaches to your network, it's just amazing.
Yeah, and I guess we've seen one side of the spectrum, and there's all the way to the other side of the spectrum, which is much more enterprise and institutional entities that may want to gain exposure to Bitcoin mining. So maybe that's where Darcy from Hive can speak a little bit more about the appetite that there is out there to gain exposure to this specific space in the context of this conversation. Even, by the way, even for a retail investor, you may not want a machine, but just buy the stock of a company. So maybe you can speak about that.
No, absolutely. And the options that you guys have put forward, the biggest thing is it's getting people to talk about it. It's getting people exposure to it. You can talk to people about Bitcoin mining, and for a lot of them, it's just a concept. But if you can put something underneath their feet to warm them up, if you can work with somebody that you can give them money and they do the mining, but you get the rewards. It's getting exposure, and I think the biggest thing is education and exposure right now. And for Hive being, the first publicly traded cryptocurrency miner in Canada, going through the evolution of Ethereum into Bitcoin, our investor base is very retail. So if you go back 2 or 3 years ago, before we had the ETFs, you could either go in, buy the Bitcoin yourself, deal with your wallets, deal with your KYC or whatever you needed to do, or you bought into a Bitcoin mining company. And that kind of exposure is very important, I think, for the investors. You're saying the retail is still very important to us. Being green energy, I think, attracts a lot of investors to us. And the institutions are starting to look at it. We've been talking about ESG for decades. It hasn't hit as hard as I thought it would have by now in North America, but it's very big in Europe. And I think that wave is starting to come this way. And so when you look at funds, whether they're green funds or individuals that want to make sure that their hard-earned money is going into investing in companies that aren't ruining their environment, they're here to help the environment. And you were talking about using excess heat. In our facility in Montreal, we take that excess heat and heat a warehouse that's 1,000 square meters of hot tub manufacturing. So it's stuff that would just go out into the environment, but we're regenerating those electrons that we're using that are into heat to go through pipes and be able to heat another facility. And it's making use of that and thinking outside of the box. I think that companies are becoming more and more, aware of these kind of things. And it's just being part of the circular economy. If you've got some wastes, let's find some way to use it.
I wanted to also talk a little bit about what I personally consider one of the most fascinating areas of Bitcoin mining, and specifically the relationship between these data centers, these facilities, and the rest of the energy infrastructure in North America and rest of the world, and specifically the relationship with grid and grid operators, and also when these operations take place off-grid. So maybe, Sonya, you could begin with talking a little bit about that and the research that you guys have been doing before we hear from others.
Bitcoin miners are a very flexible load, and so they're able to benefit the grid in a lot of ways due to that. The first benefit that we see is through demand response. They'll work with grid operators to take price signals, or just from the direction of the grid operators to turn off their load and curtail so that they can bring prices down for consumers. And then beyond that, they're also major investors into the grid. Bitcoin miners will often invest in power purchase agreements, which is essentially adding resources onto the grid. They're also investing in long-term enhancements to the grid through their interconnection agreements, where they're paying very large prices to interconnect, which is not only allowing the grid to help give them their power, but also is bringing generation to areas that may not have had that capacity originally. And then given this flexibility that Bitcoin miners have, they're also consumers of stranded energy. So this is where we see a lot of co-location, where they're locating right with wind and solar generation to directly consume that power. And this is an area where we've also seen the rise of methane mitigation practices.
Yeah, on that note, actually, Compass Mining recently made an announcement in Wyoming about a facility that specifically utilizes this gas that otherwise would be wasted, it would be burnt. And so you can talk a little bit about that.
Last week even, it's pretty exciting. I think Colin Crossman from the Wyoming Secretary of State's office was on stage just a moment ago. A 3.3 megawatt project in rural Wyoming, an oil and gas operator who, what their business is pumping oil. When you pump oil, there's sometimes gas behind that oil, and you can extract that gas, you can put it into a pipeline, you can burn it off. That's called flaring. In Wyoming, this particular oil and gas operator's oil production was constrained by they didn't have pipeline capacity to take that gas. our partner, 360 Energy, they're a major innovator in oil and gas development and Bitcoin mining. Halliburton's on their cap table. They're pioneers in this. They're coming into that oil and gas operator as a service provider. They are burning off that excess gas so that that oil producer can just continue to pump oil, and we're standing beside 360 Energy as their Bitcoin mining operator. So we're there, containers, about 1,000 machines, people keeping them running, and what it's doing is taking that gas, combusting it, getting it out of the way so that oil producer can take that mineral that's underneath the earth and turn it into energy. It's amazing.
And these companies like 360 have been getting way better and more efficient, and the operational excellence is really getting there where they can really do it, because this has been done already for a few years, but we're really getting to a level of excellence that is...
I'll end with this. Samson Mao said it earlier, and what a privilege to be on the same stage, but energy producers are the Bitcoin miners of the future. I think that's just the continuation of that with this one oil and gas example. Thank you, Jeff.
We need to get more executives from energy companies to these events and talk more with them. Darcy, maybe from the relationship with the grid perspective, maybe it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about what Hive has been doing in Paraguay specifically, and what the relationship with the grid has been there, and maybe to contextualize your operations in South America. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we started out in Sweden and in Canada, always looking for hydroelectric energy. And we were quite constrained because there wasn't a lot of other opportunities out there that we could stick to our core values. And then about a year ago, we got an opportunity down in Paraguay for 100 megawatts. And this is energy that was coming out of the largest dam in the Western Hemisphere, a 14 gigawatt dam who sells a lot of their energy to Brazil and Argentina, and they had some excess. So what we were able to do is go down and enter into a PPA with them for a couple of years and be able to pay the energy provider in US dollars every single month. Argentina might be able to get away with not paying for a while. As a publicly traded miner, if I don't pay my bill on time, all they got to do is switch it off. So they're getting energy in US dollars into their economy every single month. Since then, we've added another 200 megawatts. So we're going to be going from 6 exahash to 25 exahash. So that's about 135 megawatts worldwide to 435 by US Thanksgiving. And by that time, we're going to be the largest private energy consumer within Paraguay. And our relationship with the energy provider down there, Ande, is very strong. We've got people going down there on a regular basis to meet with them, meet with the president, because we want to make sure that we're part of the economy, part of the solution, and not make it to be a partisan issue about Bitcoin mining. Like we're talking to the president that's in power right now. We're also talking to the opposition. Sort of like the things that happen in the US, is you want to make sure that you put the framework in place that's going to outlast the current administration. So those relationships are very strong that we've got down in Paraguay, the same as what we've got in Sweden. You talk about demand response. We can shut down our 30 megawatt Bitcoin facility down to 5 megawatts within 5 seconds. So that when there is that peak in the mornings, they just send a signal to us and we bring it down. They do pay us for it, which is nice, but it's that flexibility on the grid that Bitcoin miners can provide. We don't want to be the people that are, as an industry, that are causing brownouts or causing blackouts. We have the ability to curtail, unlike, AI, it's got to be up 24/7, 100% reliability, 100% uptime. So there's a nice balance that can be made between the Bitcoin mining, balancing the grid, and also the AI side, because there's such a demand every time you go onto ChatGPT. Huge demand that's going to be coming in the next 2 or 3 years, and it's going to be very hard for the grid to be able to manage it, no matter which country you're in.
Yeah, and you mentioned about building relationships with policymakers in the country. And I mean, I guess we are in DC, and there's a lot of policy talk when it comes to specifically energy, more tied to AI than mining, I would say. But I'm curious to hear more of you guys' thoughts on the policy side of things. So maybe we can start with Gwyn specifically, and as a hardware manufacturer, what are your thoughts on the current situation? There's of course a lot going on with tariffs. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I know you guys are beginning to produce hardware in the United States. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
We we completed a pilot production run of our first miners made in the U.S. And that was great. We were extremely pleased with the quality, the speed, everything was great, and our customers seemed receptive to made in the U.S. products. The challenge, of course, is pricing, because the Bitcoin mining ASICs are exempt currently from tariffs, which are great, part of semiconductors being exempt. But the other pieces that go into making a Bitcoin mining machine aren't exempt. So whether it's components, parts, raw materials that aren't made in the US, they still have to be imported. So we're still challenged from a cost perspective. Will our customers be willing to pay 20% more or a little bit more than a Malaysian-made machine? So that's, of course, a challenge. We were in DC probably about 3 weeks ago, meeting with congressional staffers. And what I found interesting was, for the ones who were sort of like, no, Bitcoin mining is a bad thing, most of the time their position was that way because they believed that if my constituents can't turn on the lights in the morning, or they can't get ready for school or work or whatever, because Bitcoin miners are taking all the energy that our constituents need, which of course everybody would want. You have to be able to turn your lights on in the morning. But they were really interested to learn that with Bitcoin mining and the flexibility that's created from Bitcoin mining, you can shut it down within 5 seconds, so that the demand on the grid is less and customers have all the power that they need. And unlike HPC AI data centers, just being able to turn on and off as needed is hugely powerful.
We only have a few minutes left, but Sonya, maybe can you speak a little bit? Do you feel optimistic about the policy environment when it comes to Bitcoin mining in the US and North America? What are your observations as of lately?
Yeah, we've seen some good support from the administration and from Congress on introducing a strategic Bitcoin reserve and modernizing taxes for Bitcoin miners to get rid of double taxation. But where we need to see more happening is on those efforts actually following through, and on the agencies, Congress and the administration, all aligning on these goals. Additionally, Bitcoin miners are really closely related to energy, the grid, supply chain, manufacturing, and so we need to see consistent policies within those areas to support resource adequacy, grid modernization, and onshoring our supply chain. So that would be the main improvement area that we need to see from Congress.
And Darcy, you guys specifically where you felt threatened by the regulatory environment in the U.S. That is my understanding. Feel free to disagree. There have been a lot of things happening during the past years, and so I'm wondering if that perhaps has changed, and you're now a little bit more open to the U.S. specifically, and if you can speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, if you go back to the previous administration, and I'm preaching to the choir with everybody that's in this room, we looked at Gensler, we looked at what was happening with the enforcement actions, and we didn't want to come into the United States. It was too risky. We didn't want to jeopardize the rest of our operations. With the new administration, we're starting to look a little bit more at opportunities. I think the US has done a great job in terms of where it's gotten to. I think it still needs to work a little bit, and it feeds on to a little bit of what others have been saying. Is it's great that there's regulation, and that's such better than it was 2 years ago. Where it still needs to do some work on is regulations around energy, because there's certain states that don't have the infrastructure, and they've got too much red tape to get things done. And also, as you talked about, is trying to get more of the made in US miners. And I don't know if the government has to provide incentives to people to do it here, reduce some of the tariffs on some of the byproducts, or not byproducts, but pieces of the manufacturing, because if the US wants to be the leader that Mr. Trump says that he wants to be, you need to have it all within the US. Because right now, the majority of them, you have to bring them in from Malaysia. You have to bring them in from overseas, because are people going to pay the extra 20% or whatever it is, price difference? That's a decision that the company's going to have to make, decisions that shareholders are going to have to make. So I think they're there, but there's still some work that needs to be done.
And it'll take some time. Right now, although we're building fabs in the US, TSMC and Samsung and perhaps others, but right now, the US doesn't have the technology to make the advanced nodes that Bitcoin mining ASICs require. So that will take time. You can say that you're building a fab in Arizona, but it will take time to both train the people and have the technology that you need for this advanced node. That it's for Bitcoin mining and for other areas as well.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you very much for all of it. And yeah, we'll close it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Amazing.